Good evening, board members, Ms. Morales, Ms. Benavides, Mr. Garza, district staff. The time is 6 o'clock. It's the 9th day of April 2024, and I call this board workshop of the United Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. The following board members are present, starting with Mr. Rodriguez.
Ricardo Rodriguez present.
Frank Castillo present.
Javier Montemayor. A quorum is not present, but let the record show that this workshop has been posted, has been duly called, and that notice of this workshop has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Agenda item number 2, Pledge Allegiance. Could everybody please rise for the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. Agenda item number 3, public comments.
Yes, Mr. Montemayor, we do have 4 public comments. First, we have Luis de la Garza talk about raises 24-25 year, and 3 minutes per speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, gentlemen of the board, Ms. Benavides, Ms. Morales, and Mr. Garza. As you know, the end of the academic year is nearly here, and the budget process will be starting soon. I'm here to ask that you all provide for all raises, for all employees this upcoming year, as well as a cost of living adjustment, as we see the rise of prices continuing. The $20 of yesterday are no longer holding the same value today and have less purchasing power. Employees are resorting to working second and third jobs to make ends meet. While I do understand that the state government did not allocate any funds for public education, and many state districts are facing an economic crisis, the employees are not at fault that this is transpiring. Not only are districts having financial issues, individuals are also being affected by the increase in the rise of prices. Let me share a story with you. One of our recent retirees is going to have to attempt to survive on $846 a month, whereas she could have received possibly $1,000 a month had the district not frozen salaries for 3 consecutive years a while ago. This is a real-world consequence and the justification for annual raises. I share this story as a testimony so that those present and watching online realize the severity of one person's economic plight. We turn to your leadership to find creative solutions to address the financial needs of all UISD employees. I believe curtailing excessive spending and placing restrictions on discretionary funds, or perhaps reallocating said funds, would be steps in the right direction towards reducing the amount that the district is currently facing. As a former coach, I understand the phrase, "We are only as good as our last performance." The most important resource any district has is its human capital. We must actively take care of it to ensure the continued excellent service that is provided to the students. I thank you for your time and have a great evening.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Leti Juarez, and I did provide you a copy of CDC local, which she attached to her comments.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Leti Juarez. Most of us here have held a teaching position, and as teachers, we were told to document and adhere to the UISD policies. The comments I made last month were based on UISD approved policies. At the last board meeting, while you all were approving March donations, you were told Mrs. Molina's donation did not require board approval because it is considered a pass-through donation. Not one of you said anything. I know I would have. I would have said, wait a minute, administrators. Last September, the board approved Mrs. Molina's $7,200 donation for back-to-school supplies. So what is the difference? But none of you said anything. The next day, I emailed the district. I wanted to know what the difference was. The district response was, for the September donation, the funds were deposited into UISD accounts. As for the turkeys donations, this went from the donor to the children, meaning that there was no monetary exchange between the district and the donor. And on these types of donations, no documentation is required. Oh my God, your leaders, the ones you appointed, have created a major loophole, a legal scam. Now a donor can purchase the items themselves, deliver them to the district or school, and no documentation is needed. Mr. Sam Flores' worst nightmare. Imagine the legal issues that could arise since these donations are received by our students, but UISD does not require documentation. For the record, 98% of UISD donations made are legitimate, and all documentation is provided. But unfortunately, there is always that 2% of individuals that are always trying to defraud the district. Where in the donation policy that I have provided you, is there a reference to monetary exchange or pass-through, or that the district's fiscal policy does not apply? Are these the best practices the district has to offer? Obviously, the board is not troubled with these alternative facts, but I am. I am not happy with the district or the board's response, so I have reported my concern to the TEA Compliments Management Division. I have sent all my documentation on this donation and also on the disinfecting scandal. Thank you.
Next, we have Edna Olmeda on safety and pay raises.
Speaking of best practices, good evening. My name is Edna Olmeda. I'm a teacher for 30 years, and I'm here to discuss and point out some things that concern me. The first thing I wanted to discuss is safety. Because of the incident that occurred at a previous board meeting, where one of the UISD officers yanked, and I mean yanked, a poster away from an individual, whether it was an adult or a child. The approach that that officer took was inexcusable and should have been considered an assault or use of excessive force. Officers take countless trainings to learn strategies, techniques, to de-escalate situations to prevent others from getting hurt. The manner in which this officer handled this situation, all because of a poster, is very concerning. Nobody's safety was at risk due to the poster, because posters don't hurt people. People do. I was more afraid of the officer at that point than anything else. That's the message you sent out. Be afraid of officers acting irrationally. Training needs to be provided to that officer, and I hope it is provided. Because, as Mr. Mike Garza reiterated, all students do matter. In the, I think it was the February 13 board meeting. And in that situation, there was a child involved. And he also stated, and I will quote, "There are things for us to improve. There are certainly things that we can do better, and we are gonna do better." Well, this is one area that needs improvement. And as all professions, and I will make this point very clear, the attitude and behavior of one is not a reflection of all. Secondly, I want to talk about Mr. Canales, what Mr. Canales also said, I'm sorry, Mr. Canales, not about you, but what you said in reference to UISD having trouble filling positions in certain areas. For a district who thrives on data, which was evident at that time in that board meeting, and as you all have claimed, everything you do is for the students, then let's talk about that. This is what our students need. Teachers, bus drivers, and staff that are not overworked and underpaid. Ms. Dinelli, in the previous board meeting, couldn't have said it any better. We are tired.
3 minutes.
Tired of being harassed, bullied, mistreated, and disrespected. Enough is enough.
Thank you,
Please
Ms. Olmeda.
stop the waste of our taxpayers' money and direct it to areas where it is really needed.
Ms. Olmeda.
I'm sorry, to those who spent the majority of the
Last time,
time
Ms. Olmeda.
with the ones you claim to serve, our
Thank you.
students. Thank you so much.
I would like to note for the record that at 6:02 PM, we did get a quorum with Ms. Molina being present. And our
Yes,
last
for the record, let the record show that a quorum is now present, that this workshop has been duly called, and that notice of this workshop has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act.
And we do have one last public comment from Valentin Reese on facts, opinions, and recommendations.
Good evening. For the record, Valentin Vale Ruiz, veteran, taxpayer, and TST member. We're not here because we like to hear ourselves speak, as our TST president, Guado de la Garza, has been quoted in saying in TST meetings when speaking about Laredo United TST members and advocates. We are also not here yelling, but we are speaking with passion when we advocate for all employees of UISD that deserve a cost of living increase. We will not play your divide and conquer game when you only give certain groups a raise. We want a 9% raise for all employees in both UISD and LISD to make up for the 9% cost of living increase from 2021 and 2022. We're also here to speak against the high percentage raises given to the superintendent and his cabinet members for their obscene salaries. Los custodians, food servers, workers, paraprofessionals, transportation, and classified staff se merecen un porcentaje lo triple del superintendent y no al revés. Classified staff tiene los salarios más bajos y así cuándo vamos a poder mandar a nuestros hijos al colegio. Si muy apenas podemos pagar los biles. I suggest that you do not extend the superintendent and the cabinet salary until all classified staff receive a minimum 10% raise. I suggest that the board members give back the discretionary funds to the students' vocational, JROTC, and special education needs. The USD law firm allows you to place rules that bully, discriminate, and violate the freedom of speech of students, parents, and employees. The UIC police and board hide behind these rules that are unlawful, just like the Gestapo when they cooked millions of Jews. You hide behind those rules. Let me remind you that it was legal to hang blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans like me. It was also legal to spray border crossers from Mexico with insecticides while they were being stripped down naked. It was because of advocates like us that lawful changes were made. My solution to the problem is for the board to take away the rules that infringe on our First Amendment rights of free speech. If you are not part of the problem, you are part, if you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
No further comments.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4, informational items. School finance update.
Good evening, members of the board, members of the audience. We're going to have a school finance update presentation to be made by Mr. Leo Lopez from Oak Casey and Associates. Mr. Leo Lopez brings over 20 years of experience working in public school finance, mostly recently serving at TEA as Associate Commissioner for School Finance and Chief School Finance Officer. During that time, he was instrumental in directly supporting the Texas Commission on Public School Finance and in the development and implementation of House Bill 3, a historic school finance bill passed by the 86th Texas Legislature in 2019. Before serving as Chief School Finance Officer for TA, Mr. Lopez spent 4 years as the Executive Director for Finance for Austin ISD, where he oversaw the budget, finance, and accounting, treasury, risk management, and Medicaid billing functions for the district. Mr. Lopez started his career in public school finance at TEA, where he spent a decade in the agency's school finance unit, including 6 years managing foundation school program operations. Mr. Leo Lopez was also a 1997 United High School graduate. He attended Clark Elementary School, he attended Clark Middle School, and the intermediate schools here that was 7th and 8th grade. So he is a homegrown Laredo boy, man now. And so besides his experience that he brought from our school district up to Austin, He is here to bring back to our community his knowledge and his experience of working with legislators and with TEA. So please welcome Mr. Lopez, and he will be making a presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lopez.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be here. Good evening. My name is Leo Lopez. So I'm here to give you a general school finance update as well as a legislative review as to what occurred in the 88th session, and then what things are looking like as we head into the 89th session. So I'm going to cover, again, some recent updates for TEA, school finance news, what's going on in terms of the funding realities. There's a lot of different communications coming out of the state in terms of what happened from the 88th session. I'm here to analyze those slides, looking at staffing trends in Region 1 and at UISD over time, and looking at what's going on in the runoff elections. So very, very quickly, I'm gonna try to keep this about 30 minutes. Right now, the TEA is proposing a few school first changes. That's financial accountability. One of the indicators has to do with the administrative cost ratio. In speaking with my former staff at the agency, they feel that this would be a fairer look at administrative cost ratio. They're going to look at administrative costs relative to total costs instead of just instructional costs. I'm working with the district staff to see how these proposed ratios would impact UISD. There's another change related to districts that owe the state money, but your district is not in that situation, so that indicator won't affect your district. So this slide just has the formula changes in the proposed formula related to school first. So for time, though, I'm going to go ahead and move on to some other slides. I want to spend some more time on some other topics. So here you have the proposed indicators in terms of the current ratios based on district size for ISDs, and then the proposed revised and the current ones. And this is the same information for charter, so they're doing this for both school districts and charter schools. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is Senate Bill 12. So Senate Bill 12 in the 87th session, that created a hold harmless related to the over 65 homeowners. And so this created a hold harmless that the agency has been implementing, but when they first implemented it, we had some concerns with the way they were implementing it. They were leaving some money off the table for school districts. We at Mokese had spent a few months in dialogue with the agency trying to suggest a different methodology. In recent talks with TEA school finance staff, they're looking at changing that calculation actually to provide districts a little more money. In terms of UISDs, we think that the impact of this is about 2.8 million or so, or 2.4 million on the M&O side, maintenance and operations. So here's a quick example of what's going on. So Senate Bill 12 compressed frozen levies. So House Bill 3 in 2019 created a compression of M&O tax rates over time. But the frozen levies for over 65 and disabled homeowners, their taxes were frozen. And so what Senate Bill 12 did in the 87th session is it created a situation where the frozen levies were compressed by the ratio of M&O compression, but frozen levies are both maintenance and operations and interest and sinking. So as a result, Senate Bill 12, a unintended consequence of what TEA was doing is they were only holding district harmless for loss of M&O collections. So as an example, here is an example for Harlingdale ISD. So you have a district, Harlingdale is losing $720,000 because of the frozen levy. And TEA's current calculation, their whole harmless is only generating $77,000 worth of additional state aid. And so the reason for that is because line 3, as you can see right there, line 3, total M&O collections, TEA is using a loss of $529,000. We've suggested to TEA that they use the total levy loss, which would be this $720,000 difference right here, the difference between this number and this number. And so TEA I think is going to do that. And so if you plug in that number in line 3 of the calculation, TEA generates a whole harmless payment in the amount of $411,000. So this is a good thing for school districts. This is going to make sure that districts were not harmed from the passage of Senate Bill 12, as that was not the intent of the legislature when they passed that bill. So that's something that I think we can work with the district to look to see that the impact, once TEA makes that update, that they have all the correct data and that this district is getting every dollar they need under this hold harmless. Next, I want to talk about funding realities. So there's been a lot of discussion about how much money actually came out of the 88th session. TEA has put out some communication, some slides starting in the summer talking about how much new money was put into public education. And I'm here to talk about those slides and provide some context and some actual, kind of refuting some of the numbers on those slides. So here is one slide. Again, this is the Texas Education Agency slide. This is a slide that I used to work on when I worked as Associate Commissioner at TEA. This has a total amount of funding in Texas. TEA puts out an annual report, State of Public Education in Texas each year, and they have a section on finances. And so as you can see, when you look at this report, you can see the dramatic increase from 2021 school year over to the 2022 school year, roughly $1,000 increase. And so if you were to look at this chart without any context, you would assume that everything is great in Texas in terms of the state of public education funding. A closer look at those numbers, going back into the last 4 years, you can see that in terms of what's driving the increase, from $13,904 to $14,928 in the last two columns of this table here, you can see it's the increase in federal funds. So everything that happened during the COVID pandemic and post-COVID pandemic, all of the ESSER dollars that were funded by the feds, that is what's driving the increase. If you look at the increase in local funding, as you can see with property values going up, property taxes going up, and then as you can see, state aid has actually declined by about $130 per student in those last 2 years. And if you look at in 2019, state aid has gone down by about $300 per student. And recapture for those districts that pay recapture has increased as well. So as you can see, yes, funding is up by about $2,200 over this 4-year period, but that's mainly due to the increase in federal funds and an increase due to local property taxes. So the state has not kept up their fair share of funding the system, which is something that I'm going to point out here as well. This is another TEA slide, which there's a lot of numbers on this slide. And so the ones you really need to just look at are the numbers in the far right column. Bottom right cell, 18.4 billion. TEA is saying that the state funding for K-12 in Texas is projected to increase 18 billion over the previous biennium, right, or roughly 9 billion a year. The state does their budget in 2-year cycles, so that 18.4 billion is they're saying that that's the highest amount of state aid that's they've ever sent to school districts, and it does represent about 1/3 of all state funds in the state budget. However, that 18.4 billion, that's not really new money that's going to school districts. So what I'm going to talk about now is what comprises that 18.4 billion, and I'm going to essentially dispel all the numbers that the state is using. So the state is saying here that here's a listing, a line item, if you will, of all this new money that's been coming to public education. And so what you can see here, the first line item increases in the instructional materials allotment, 621 million. That's actually not an increase in funding because the previous session, the 87th session, the state cut funding because of all the federal money coming in, the state reduced funding for instructional materials with the express intent of restoring that funding once the federal funding expired. So to their credit, they did make good to their promise and they did restore funding for instructional materials, but that's not new money. That's just putting back state money that had to historical levels. So that 600 million is not new money over and above what districts have been expecting. Another thing, the next line item, 500 million for House Bill 1605 for state-approved instructional materials. So that is technically new money, but districts need to opt into the state's curriculum. So that's not money that districts automatically get access to. They need to opt in to use the state's materials. Furthermore, the state hasn't actually released those materials yet. They may not be available until 24-25 or the second year of the biennium. And so for me, that makes it unclear as to whether or not there will only be 250 million available for school districts because that's a biennial amount. So at this point, TEA has not put out any communication that I'm aware of that would indicate that the first year appropriation carries over into the second year. Typically, that doesn't happen. Typically, when the agency has their budget, you have their year one appropriation. If they didn't spend it, it lapses. So unless there was specific language that gave TEA carryover authority, then potentially up to 250 million of that may lapse. Third line item, 300 million for school safety. That's to pay for House Bill 3 that just passed in the regular session. To the state's credit, they did pass a small increase in school safety, a very, very minor increase, a whopping 28 cents per student increase in school safety. They did provide $15,000 in new money per campus, but they also had a lot of unfunded mandates in that bill. So they're requiring an armed person on each campus. That costs far more than $15,000 per campus. So while we appreciate and acknowledge the 300 million that the state appropriated as part of House Bill 3, that is well short of what I think is needed to fully fund the mandates in that bill. So, I would have expected and hoped for funding in the neighborhood of $1 billion as opposed to 300 million, and the state did not do that. And one thing I should have mentioned before, this is all in the context of a historic $60 billion surplus that the state had. They had 30+ billion in the rainy day fund, and they had another 30 million in general fund that they could have used. Next line item, an increase in the golden penny yield. So that's 2.4 billion. That while that is additional money relative to 21 school year, or excuse me, relative to the 23 school year, that's money that everyone knew was coming already. And so when districts started working on their budgets for the 23-24 school year, as early as January 2023, that money was already baked into the budgets. And so one of the things that the state caused a lot of confusion is after the session, they had a lot of presentations in the summer talking about how this was a lot of new money as of the results of the 88th session. The 88th legislature actually did not do anything to deliver that funding. That was money that was automatic and was expected already. The next line item, $60 million for new instructional facilities. That's money that goes to pay for startup costs whenever anyone opens up a new campus. That is, again, not new money because in the 87th session, the state cut NIFA funding from 100 million a year to 70 million a year. So again, this is just restoring NIFA funding to historical levels once again. The last one, the last one in the first section, 673 million. Again, that's additional money that they appropriated for payroll taxes. That helped, of course, shore up some things related to retirement. Again, appreciated, but that money didn't go into the classrooms. That's not money that districts could use in their budgets. In the next tranche of numbers, you have school safety grants, 1.1 billion. That is new money that I do want to give the state credit for. That's for one-time uses to shore up infrastructure needs. However, the TEA's own survey indicated an estimated need of over 2.2 billion. So while the 1.1 billion is new money, that again, we are giving the state credit for that. It's roughly about half of what was needed based on TEA's own survey of facility safety needs. The next line item, subsidy for TRS Active Care, the state appropriated 589 million for TRS Active Care health insurance, but only about half of employees in the state are at districts that participate in TRS Active Care, and United ISD does not, right? So for all the districts that are self-insured or participate in a health insurance co-op or fully insured or some other alternative, they did not get any relief from increased health costs. So districts like United and Laredo and others did not get the benefit of that 589 million. Cybersecurity initiative, that is 55 million, but again, with a state the size of Texas with 5.5 million students, 1,200 school systems, 55 million does not go very far. The next set of numbers, the state is taking credit for 4 billion that's available for new FS Foundation School Program money to go for teacher pay, special education, and school finance reform in general. However, the state did not pass a school finance bill in the 88th session. What that means is school districts cannot access any of that $4 billion that's listed right there. So, unless the governor calls a 5th special session before next January and then retroactively passes a school finance bill, that $4 billion really does not mean anything. That's money that's available, that's going to lapse, and that's going to go back to the state treasury. So again, the state's taking credit for appropriating the money. However, the state essentially killed any chance of any new money when they killed House Bill 1 in the 4th special session. Again, 49 million has been appropriated for virtual school bill. House Bill 481 in the regular session was taken down in a point of order in the House. And so again, that's money that's appropriated, but there's no bill to spend the money. School choice, this is an interesting one. I want to talk about that for a second. So 500 million for education savings accounts or vouchers. All throughout session and all throughout the special sessions, the state talked about how that 500 million was not coming out of the education budget. It was coming out of other funds. It was coming out of state GR. However, when TEA talks about funding for education, they're including 500 million in the bucket. So the state is talking out of both sides of their mouth, so to speak. They want to have it both ways. They want to say that it's not coming out of the education budget. However, they're listing it as part of the education budget. Again, that's money, even if there were to be a voucher bill that were to pass, that 500 million would not go towards school districts. In fact, all the students that would leave potentially to go to a private school, that money would follow the student, and districts would actually lose money under a scenario like that. So that's, to me, disingenuous to include that 500 million when you're talking about new funding for education. The last set of numbers, there's a pass-through money for property tax relief, 5.3 billion, and then 12.2 billion that was passed in Senate Bill 2 in July in the second special session. That's 17 billion that was passed through school districts to give property tax relief. Now, as a homeowner, I'm very, very grateful to the state for providing much needed property tax relief. However, that should not be counted as education money because that money does not go to school district's budget. It does not help the school district budgets. All that does is reduce property taxes, increase state aid to make up for those lost property taxes, but that's not additional money that goes to school districts. So again, the state's talking about how there's $18 billion being flowed in new money to education, and when there's only a couple of billion that I would even give them credit for. And then again, in those categories, it's not enough in the specific categories that they've been listed in. So the next thing I want to talk about is special education funding. I know that's a very important topic here and throughout Texas. So this is a slide that I actually prepared for the TEA when I was Associate Commissioner for School Finance back in 2022. And so there was a commission for special education funding. And so one of the questions I asked the commissioner was like, are you sure you want me to create this slide highlighting that the fact that there's a $1.9 billion deficit in special education funding? Because if we create the slide and then the legislature does nothing about it, we've essentially we've created a slide that others can use as ammunition to point out the fact that the state did nothing. And ironically, here I am, 2 years later, doing just that. I'm pointing out that the state did not do anything for special education. And in fact, what I'm going to show you here, it's a similar slide. Let me orient you to the slide real quick. So the one difference between this slide and this slide, this includes federal funds. So the yellow portion and the purple portion that you can't really see, the light blue and the light yellow are federal funds. What I'm going to focus on are the state money. So the state formulas in the foundation school program. So the blue and the orange. So I went back and looked, and I updated essentially a version of that slide. I don't have access to some of the TEA's internal data to have everything to recreate that slide right now. But as you can see, the gap has grown from 1.8 billion in 2020 to over 2 billion in 23. The blue is the entitlements from the summary finances, and the orange are actual PEIMS special education expenditures as reported to the agency. Now, if trends hold, what we're projecting for 24 against that, those aren't final numbers. That's why that's formatted differently. But what we're projected to see that gap continue to increase to between 2.1 and 2.2 billion. Again, the state had a chance to provide funding for special education, and they did not. Next, I want to cover ESSER. So statewide, ESSER is the federal funding that was provided from the federal government to help with COVID learning loss. And statewide, ESSER 2, all districts have drawn down 100% of those funds. UISD has drawn down 0% of those funds as well. ESSER 3, we're running down on that clock right there. It's got to be spent or drawn down by the end of the summer, essentially. Statewide, there's 28%. At least that's what's been reported to the agency. That doesn't mean that districts haven't spent 28%. That just means that they haven't reported everything to the agency. Numbers indicate for UISD that UISD is, in fact, below half that at 13%. And so I imagine by the time you get to the end of that drawdown period, UISD will also have drawn down 100% of their ESSER monies to make sure that they're making use of all monies available to them. So next I want to talk about staffing trends. But again, some of these slides are going to be TEA slides, and the purpose of showing these slides are so you can understand the frame of mind that a state legislator might have when you're talking to them about teacher salaries or staffing. And so here is just to give you a general sense, so you've got, in general, in Texas, payroll makes up the biggest portion of any district's budget, right? I mean, that people are what drive school district budgets. And so statewide, when you look at all funds, you have 66% of total funds, including the money that goes for bonds and interest and sinking. When you're just looking at operating expenses statewide, you have roughly 80% of operating expenses are tied up in people, which is also one of the challenges. School districts are slightly different than companies in that, if you don't have any new revenue, which right now districts don't, there's only a few ways to increase revenue. So you either increase student counts, increase attendance, or increase your tax rate. Other than that, you have to cut costs, and it's very difficult to cut costs when you're a people-driven system. You either have to, through attrition, you need to reduce and not fill vacancies or retirements, or you need to do something different. So it is challenging in an environment where 80% of your expenditures are driven by people. Again, this is a TEA slide, and I want to talk to you I want to show you what they show members when the commissioner or someone else of the agency gives a presentation to the state legislature. This is a slide that they would show. So real quick here, you can see the blue line is the number of teachers in Texas going back to 06-07, and the orange line is the number of students in Texas statewide. So as you can see, there was a dip in 1920 because of the COVID pandemic, and you can see there was a continued increase in teachers statewide. Now, our numbers show that a lot of that was due to additional teachers for the special education program statewide, so that's pretty common, and there was a greater need. And then a lot of that's also driven by ARDS, so by the Admission Review and Dismissal Committees. When you have an increased identification in students with disabilities and need special education, and if those ARDS call for additional staffing, then the district needs to meet those needs. But the reason why I'm showing you this slide is because there's a reason why TEA shows the slide. What they are telling the legislature is that districts have the money they need, but they're overstaffed. And the thing is, it's not that simple, right? Because you're looking at numbers at the aggregate. You're not looking at things like how many additional special education students there are in Texas in the last 4 years, and you're not looking at all the additional positions that districts needed to add, and are funding with a lot of ESSER funds as well to help deal with COVID learning loss. Excuse me.
So are these all teachers or special ed teachers?
These right here are all teachers, and this is again TEA data, TEA slide. We just grabbed this off a TEA presentation that they began making about a year ago, and they've updated. So here is, again, this is another TEA slide, and I don't agree with the message on this slide. I don't want to make that very clear, but I want to show you what the messaging coming out of the agency is to the state legislature, so you can understand what you're up against when you're dealing with state members. TEA basically picked a year. They picked 2012, and this slide says if the student-teacher ratio had remained at 2012 levels, teacher compensation could be approximately $3,500 more while spending the same amount of money. So what TEA is basically saying is districts have enough money, they just need to not fill any of their vacancies. And again, I don't agree with that sentiment. That's the state would like that to be true because that lets them off the hook for continuing to invest in public education. The fact is, inflation has been running rampant over the last 5 years, and the state has done nothing about it. And so instead of looking at themselves and saying, hey, we need to do something about inflation, they instead turn around and point the finger back at school districts and say, you just need to cut staff. And so that's not the solution if we want the best for our children. We need to do right by our kids. So here's a slide of Region 1. So this shows you what Region 1 looks like. UISD, in terms of enrollment ratios, are slightly higher than the region average. So while the Region 1 average ratio has hovered around 15.5 over the last 4 years, UISD one higher, so ranging from 16.5 to 16.4. So that means UISD, relative to its peers in Region 1, has, again, more students per teacher. So if you're looking at comparing yourself to your peers, you're doing slightly better than the Region 1 average. Very similarly, So here is a total staff to enrollment ratio. UISD numbers are right in line with the total staff ratio. And again, I think a lot of this is driven by additional aides that were needed in terms of special education and in some other categories, so that they may not necessarily be teachers, but other staff, So again, these ratios have gotten slightly smaller over the last 4 years, but some of that also has to do with all the enrollment that was lost from COVID. There were a lot of districts that suffered enrollment losses and attendance losses. I know attendance rates have never recovered since COVID. I know when I was associate commissioner at TEA, we were looking at attendance rates and an ADA hold harmless for those years, and now it looks like there's a new normal where attendance rates are just lower than they were. Hopefully, I'm hopeful that that trend would reverse itself over time, but right now the numbers are not bearing that out. And so even though, and that's the other thing that the state doesn't necessarily want to point out. So they're looking at charts like this in terms of teachers to students, but the funding is driven by attendance, right? And so you can have the same number of students, but if you have 3 or 4% of them that are not attending regularly, that costs the district money. And so I think a better chart than this would be to show ADA to teacher ratios, because ADA to teacher ratios, it kind of goes to funding, because enrollment in Texas does not fund on enrollment, they fund on attendance. And so this is something I think I would like to see the agency show a version of this chart with ADA. And in fact, now that I've said it, I think we're going to create that chart. So we're going to see what it looks like when you compare against ADA. I expect that the relationship should be similar, but starting with 1920, I expect that the lines are going to be a lot closer together than if you're looking at enrollment. Next, I'm going to cover runoff elections and beyond. So what we're looking at very quickly. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I know school finance starts to make people's yawn and sleepy and eyes glaze over. So don't worry, I'm not going to make everyone jump up and stretch, but I'm almost done, I promise. So what's going to come next in the 89th session? So as you may or may not have heard, Governor Abbott through his support for a lot of opponents running up against members that voted against vouchers in the regular session. He was successful in the opponents for those incumbents losing. So what you have here is these 4 members right now that are in runoff elections. So Gary Van Dever, for an example, he's an ally for public education, as is a lot of these others, and a lot of these had targets on their back, and the governor was successful in defeating a lot of members that held public education as a high priority and voted against vouchers. And it would not shock me to have a few more of these in runoffs turn out that way. And so what that means is, even though in your district or in Region 1, this shows Region 1, your heavily Democratic region, you do have 2 runoffs. You have House District 37, that's Janie Lopez's seat. You have a Cortez and Gracia Democratic runoff on the 28th of May, and then you have the Cuellar and Castellano Democratic runoff here in House District 80. So even though you do have some runoffs going on, I think in Region 1, just in general, Democrats tend to be more education friendly than some Republicans. I'm not casting broad strokes between parties, because there are a lot of Republicans that have education as priorities, but you're less likely to find a member that, or a proposed member that's supported of vouchers in the Democratic Party. I guess I should phrase it that way. And so even though you're decidedly safe in terms of having someone represent you that's pro-voucher, statewide, that's a little different. And so here's just a map of the 2 districts. So I'm going to go to this next slide real quick and then talk and wrap things up. But here's an opinion that was put out in the Dallas Express. So there's essentially what they're saying is, so a little context, there's a long-standing tradition that even when the Republicans control the House, they appoint Democrats as committee chairs, because the House has always the House has always prided themselves on being very bipartisan, working together, working across the aisle. And so here you have someone saying that, hey, that it's time to end that practice, and we need to have House Republicans should make it clear that the practice of appointing Democrats to chair committees will come to an end as well. So that's a dramatic shift if that were to happen. This is something that, it is important to watch. Again, historically in the House, you have had Democrats, chairing some committees. Now, what does this all mean for the 89th? So what this means is that there's going to be very likely a focus on property tax relief, and I'll tell you why in a second, a focus on education savings accounts or vouchers, and there probably will be some attempts at school finance and accountability reforms. But things are very different going into the 89th, especially if the governor is successful in having a few other members, a few other challengers successful in the runoffs. There's a lot less leverage in the public education community in terms of you need to pass a school finance bill in order to get an education savings account. And also, again, there's record increases in the surplus. And so I've heard that there's going to be another big surplus for the state. And then I've also heard that statewide, there's also, once again, pretty strong value growth. And so as property values increase, so do property taxes. And so the state's going to have sitting on a lot of money, a lot of cash going into the next session. I anticipate that they're going to try to fund, again, additional round of property tax relief and savings accounts. I do think that they are going to do something with school finance. It would be very difficult for them not to politically, because some of them are going to be up for election next time around. And so they are going to do something with school finance. But I do think if there's a school finance bill, it won't be as rich as what House Bill 1 coming out of the 4th special session would have been. I think it's going to be closer to the $4 to $5 billion range instead of instead of 6 to 7 or 8 billion. So again, that's where we are right now in April. All this could change if Speaker Phelan is unsuccessful in his runoff election, or if he is, that could potentially change who's chair of public education. So right now we have Chairman Brad Buckley as chair of public ed. He's friendly to public education. We have a good relationship with Chairman Buckley, and he had a lot of good things in the school finance bill. But if there's a new chair, it's very possible there could be a new chairman of House Public Education. And so a lot of that's we're gonna have a lot more clarity once we get out of May in terms of what's going on there. So I do think there's gonna be a chance for new money going into the 89th session. What that means is the 25-26 school year, the 26-27 school year. In terms of 24-25 school year, there's really not a whole lot of new money coming out of the legislature. So property tax relief and vouchers, I think, will be high on the legislature's priority, and then school finance, I think, will be not a distant third, but I think it's going to be third. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Can you go back to the diagram where you had listed all the Region 1? One more.
This
right
one?
there. How accurate is that? I know that some of the Democrats.
It's my understanding that that's accurate. If there's a mistake there, I apologize. Is there one in particular that you're looking at?
The first one, I don't think he's a Democrat anymore.
Oh, well, well, there you go. I apologize for that.
I just wanted to know.
Yes, yeah,
maybe we're good in this area.
we'll fix that. But yeah, I mean, but I know Representative Guillen, again, he is, I think, friendly to public education. I've spoken with him.
Education,
Yes.
Public education.
Yes. From that's my
Well,
understanding.
that's good to know.
Yes. Did you have any other questions of any other part of the presentation?
Good. Any questions?
Not at this time. Thank you, Mr. Lopez, for
Okay.
your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4B, Clear Backpack Initiative.
Good evening, Mr. Montemayor, Mr. Castillo, Ms. Molina, Mr. Rodriguez. This next item, and members of the audience, this next item that we wanted to discuss, we brought it as an informational item. It does not require board action, but we have been having the discussion and having conversations about the possibility of implementing the Clear Backpack initiative next school year. We've done some studies. We've looked at other school districts that have adopted it. For example, Dallas ISD, which was one of the biggest districts in the state of Texas, adopted it this school year. So we've been trying to make contact with them, studying their regulation and their FAQs and the dedicated website that they have. I know that Laredo ISD is implementing it for this coming school year for all students with the exception of pre-K. We did collect some data and we wanted to share the data with you. We did an informal I guess we gathered informal feedback from our CNA committee, that is for Safe, Positive, and Supportive Culture. That is our CNA group that we met with in March, and our committee, which is composed of district administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals, other district staff, were 100% in agreement with the implementation, community members as well, with the implementation of the Clear Backpack Initiative for next school year. We did have a leadership survey also on April the 3rd, so we surveyed all our campus principals and district leadership, and we had a return of 98% in favor of the Clear Backpacks. And of course, we wanted to survey our parents. I have to say that we actually have gotten a lot more responses in just a few days of gathering data from our parents, which means they're interested or they want to provide feedback with this question. And we currently have 76% of our parents that are in favor of adopting Clear Backpacks for this coming school year. So again, we're in the early stages of having this conversation. We're considering it. I know that we have our purchasing department that has been working with different vendors and getting, quality backpacks and the best price. Now, if we do implement it for this coming school year, we are looking at purchasing the backpacks for our students. We wouldn't expect our parents to have to incur that cost. So we're looking at quality, we're looking at cost, and we're looking at, just different options that we have. Of course, we know that it's just another layer of protection with all of the other initiatives that we currently have in place for safety in the school district. So this is just another option that we're considering.
What about like students who carry 2 to 3 backpacks? They've got sports, they've got their books, and they've got,
So we're looking at, as a matter of fact, LISD already has a dedicated webpage, and they've already answered all of those questions. I know that what Dallas ISD does is they use mesh backpacks. What LISD, I know, is considering is having the students check in with their coaches, drop off their things so that they can be searched. It was very interesting, actually, when we were starting to do research. One of the school districts that we looked into, and I think it was Mesquite, if I'm not mistaken, Mesquite ISD, that in their first day of implementation, they actually found a weapon with a student that was not in compliance. Again, we know that, again, we're just trying to add layers of protection, things that we haven't already tried before. So we'd have to iron out all those little details, Mr. Montemayor, with the different departments and, our staff as well.
So 42,000 plus backpacks.
41,000 plus
41,000.
backpacks.
Yeah.
The ones that we are actually looking at they're pretty good. They actually have a lifetime warranty as well. Again, I want to add that if we do implement, and we are getting feedback from our parents as well about, how they feel about the implementation. Do we want to do secondary only? Do we want to do all grades? Do we want to do all grades with the exception of pre-K? But again, when we do implement, we are looking at purchasing all the backpacks for our students, and the ones that we are considering do have a lifetime warranty. So that's another thing that we.
Even if they lose it?
Not if they lose it.
Yeah, only if it breaks. At the end of the day, we're starting somewhere, sir, so we do understand that there's other, athletic bags and some other materials, but, we'll start here with the masses, and then we'll figure out the details on all those other activities.
I would think you have to get it done rather quickly because sales for school supplies and the shopping starts pretty much at
The summer.
Right.
mid to late summer, and so.
Yes.
So we're looking at, we were wanting to make sure that we gathered feedback from everyone, right? Especially our administrators, our parents, right, at the end of the day. So we're going to continue collecting data or feedback from them to the end of this week, and we know that we're going to come back as a team on Monday next week during management and hopefully make a recommendation and put the information out right away to our parents and our community. If we decide to roll it out at the beginning of the year, what we've seen other school districts do is they don't roll it out at the very beginning. They do a soft rollout, so they do certain grades, and then they fully implement in the spring semester, so that's another option.
I was just going to ask that. Is it going
yes.
to be across the board, all grade levels, or are we going to do
Right now,
implementation of high school first?
actually, right now, what we're seeing as far as our surveys are concerned is our parents are in favor of doing all grade levels at once. So
What would be the downside? I mean, what do parents, do they elaborate on why they're not in agreement?
I know that some of the questions that we've had, or some of the feedback that we got from some of our administrators have to do with, personalization, right? Going back to some of the concerns that parents have even with the uniform, right? That, identity and personalization and things like that. I think those have been the biggest concerns. We've talked about, I know that we've seen the FAQs and some of the regulations that other school districts have where they don't allow students to decorate or to add, because then it defeats the purpose of the backpack being clear if eventually it's going to be covered with, stickers and decorations and so on. So I think that so far that's what we've gotten as the biggest, I guess,
So why is it that we want to do it? For safety?
Yes,
For
sir.
It's
security?
another layer of-
Or what are,
Yes, sir.
another
So-
layer of protection?
So just to give you a typical scenario, whenever we've had particular threats and we send a team, usually at our high schools, right, where we send a team the next day, so we're checking every single backpack that walks into that particular facility. So if you could just imagine 2,400, 2,500 students and doing maybe 3 or 4 entry points and having to check every backpack, this will probably speed up that process whenever we have those type of situations. So you can see
Do
clearly
we have
through
any
the bags.
numbers, whether or not this happens in the elementary age level or middle school or?
So those particular searches that we've done that have been acute when there's been a threat have only been at the high schools. What we have implemented at the elementaries is a form of a pass-through. So what that means is we ask the students to open up their backpacks and the teacher does a walkthrough down the aisles in the classroom to be able to check inside the backpacks. But obviously, if they're clear, that process can be done at the entry point
I
instead
imagine the
of.
parents won't mind if, especially we're paying for it, right?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I have no issue, but I just wanted to make sure we're gonna still focus on the safety and security. I mean, we also have to think of our safety and security officers and employees who have to look at this.
Yes,
So
sir.
They wanna make sure that you do it as fast as possible with safety in mind.
Yes, sir. So this is the primary driver of this discussion is safety. It's just another layer of protection that we can, have so that we can be more efficient in processing the students.
All right, thank you. Agenda item number 5, monthly disbursements.
Good evening, Mr. Montemayor, members of the board, members of the audience. My name is Rosa Cabello, Director of Accounting, and we bring forward action item monthly disbursements for the month of March. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Ma'am, that's all your report, thank you.
Thank you.
B, property tax refunds for the month of March 2024.
Good evening, board members, administrators in charge, members of the audience. I bring to you the property tax refunds for the month of March. We only have one for an overpayment of $726.28.
Overpaid.
Yes, an overpayment. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Letter C, awarding bids, proposals, qualifications, and extensions. Good evening, Ms. Jackson.
Good evening, board members. We have the following for your consideration. RFQ 2024-001, MEP Engineering Services for district-wide construction projects and general maintenance. DBR Engineering is the most qualified, and Leaf Engineers is the second most qualified. RFQ 2024-002, Civil Engineering and Surveying Services for district-wide construction and general maintenance projects. The recommended vendor is KCI Technologies as the most qualified, and Howland Engineering and Surveying is the second most qualified. RFQ 2024-003, Structural Engineering Consulting Services for district-wide construction renovations, alterations, and general maintenance repairs. The recommended vendor is RSCR, Inc. as the most qualified, and Amtech Solutions as the second most qualified. RFQ 2024-004, Architectural Services for district-wide construction and general maintenance to Cavazos Architects is the most qualified. And then we have 5 renewals for your consideration.
Any questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Letter D, low attendance waiver for United Independent School District for August 29th, 2023. And we could take E as well for January 15th, 2024.
Yes, good afternoon, board members, administrators in charge, and members of the audience. For the record, my name is Thelma Martinez, Director of Attendance. I bring before you 4 items for your consideration. I will be covering items 5, D, E, F, and G. All 4 items are for low attendance. This recommendation is based on the following. Districts or campuses may ask for a low attendance waiver on a day that school was held, but that attendance was at least 10 percentage points lower than the district, or for a specific campus or campuses. On each one of these items, the attendance department does have the supporting documentation needed for submission. I will be covering item D. The first item for your consideration is for low attendance at UISD on August the 29th, 2023, due to a safety issue initiated by a statewide bomb threat on August the 28th. UISD in 2022-23 had a 93.1% attendance, but on the 29th, UISD attendance was 69.1 for a difference of 24 percentage points. Therefore, the district is able to apply for a low attendance waiver. On item E, the second item for your consideration is also for low attendance at UISD on Monday, January 15th, due to inclement weather. In the 22-23 school year, the district had an attendance rate of 93.1%. And on January 15th, the district's attendance rate was 54.94 percentage points, which is a difference of 38.16%. Therefore, the district is able to apply for a low attendance waiver. In item F, this is also for low attendance, and this is at specific campuses on Wednesday, January 17th, due to inclement weather. The campuses affected were United High School, United South High School, LBJ, Salvador Garcia Middle, Antonio Gonzalez Middle School, Lamar Bruni Vergara Middle School, Cuellar Elementary, and Muller Elementary. You may take a look at the table. If you look at the table, you will see the prior year's attendance rate for each one of the campuses. You also see the attendance rate on that day. And if you look at the difference, each one of the campuses had more than 10 percentage points. Therefore, we are able to apply for a low attendance waiver. And the last item is G. And this one is, again, for low attendance for LBJ High School and Lamar Bruni Vergara on Tuesday, March the 26th, 2024, due to a safety issue initiated by threatening written messages, which were investigated by law enforcement. LBJ had an attendance rate of 89.78 in 22-23 and 78.63 on March the 26th for a difference of 11.15 percentage points. Lamar Bruni Vergara had an attendance rate of 92.2% in 22-23, and this year had 71.23 on March the 26th for a difference of 20.97 percentage points. Therefore, we are able to apply for a low attendance waiver. Any questions on these four items?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Agenda item H, boundary changes effective for 2024 through 2025 school year for Freedom Elementary School, Bonnie Garcia Elementary School, and J. Safarini Elementary School.
Yes, and that's me too.
All right.
Good afternoon, board members, administrators in charge, and members of the audience. For the record, my name is Thelma Martinez, Director of Planning. I bring before you the following item for your consideration. We are recommending that the Board of Trustees approve the following boundary change for Freedom Elementary, Bonnie Garcia Elementary, and Safarini Elementary for the 24-25 school year. This boundary change will have no impact on students since presently there are no homes in the area. We are recommending what we called a land cleanup. Please allow me to show you the following maps for the proposed change. In the first map, you have the current boundaries for these three schools. You take a look at the blue area, which is Safarini. The green area is Freedom Elementary, and the pinkish area is Bonnie Garcia. This is what we currently have as our boundaries. If you go to the next map, this is what we are proposing. Can you go down a little bit, right there?
That's all that you developed.
Yeah. We are proposing this this section right here, in the bluish area, which would go to Saffarini Elementary, and we are proposing this area right here with the pinkish stripes that would go to Bonnie Garcia Elementary. What I do want to say is that the main reason for this boundary change proposal is presently that there are no roads and no travel route directly that would lead them to Freedom Elementary. Because this area right here, since it's in green, it pertains to Freedom, but there are no roads that would take the students directly to Freedom Elementary. So if we look at this area right here, students would technically have to come down Los Presidentes, Avenida Los Presidentes, go down Cuatro Vientos Road. Can you bring it down a little bit, Sam, please? Come down here, go down the state highway to Freedom Elementary. They would have to go all the way around because there are no roads. If we look at the area right here that we are proposing attend Saffarini for the next school year, if you look around, these students are already going, they're part of Las Misiones, and again, they would have to go all the way around before getting to Freedom Elementary. And that these two areas, one of them is called Copper Creek, and the other one is Lago del Valle. So these are the two areas that we are proposing for the land cleanup for the boundary change for the next school year. Okay?
How does that affect their middle school?
No, they already go to the correct middle school, so it will not impact them at all. And if we look at this area right here, the area that these students already get bused. So we have already been in communications with transportation, so it would not be a big impact, especially if we were to bus these students would have to get bused. It would be a very long route to the school.
So on the left side of Las Misiones, they're going to go to Zaffarini, and on the right side of Las Misiones, across the street, they're going to go to...
This right here would be this is Bonnie Garcia right here.
I'm talking about Las Misiones, where you got...
And this right here would be Saffarini, correct. And it was just this section right here. If you go to the, can you go down to the previous, to the current boundaries, Sam?
Oh, up
Down,
to the other map?
yeah,
the
up,
first map?
right there.
Yes, ma'am.
It was just this little section right here, sir, that pertained to Freedom. Okay?
Good.
So if you go to the last map, this is what the boundaries, if approved, this is what we would be looking at for 24-25 school year, which I think would be a very good benefit to our parents and to our students. And presently, at both campuses, there is room to house the students.
Since there's no impact on students, normally the process, we come to the board as an informational item, we present to parents, we come back to approve, but there's no students here that are affected, so we're just asking for this change before there's actually students there, and then we have to go through that process that I described.
That's good. Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions? Thank you so much.
Agenda item 5I, renewal extension of delinquent tax collection contract with Castillo Reyes and Del Rio Law Group LLC.
Yes, sir. Mr. Montalban, members of the board, we have a packet of information that the law firm wanted to present for consideration for an extension of their agreement.
And for the board's information, I was provided an amendment to the contract by our tax attorneys. I did review it. The only change literally to the agreement is it's a 4-year extension, and it's approved by our firm.
I don't know if anybody has any questions. They're here to answer any questions for you.
Ms. Wang, you want to, Del Rio, you want to say anything?
Well, been a pleasure serving UISD here since 2021, and we look forward to our continued participation as your attorneys on delinquent taxes. And I would say that here publicly, I want to recognize one of our partners, Mrs. Shen Del Rio, who is the person that's in charge of the tax office, and she spearheaded a great office. And I would dare say that her performance, she's hitting on all cylinders. She's doing a great job for you all.
Thank you. Any questions I can answer for you?
I'm good.
No, this time. Thank you. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before, also, I want to recognize one of our partners, Mr. Mario Castillo, over here in the back, and one of our associates, Mr. Mario Castillo, III, he was here a minute ago.
Oh, he's there. He's there in the back.
There he is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's for an item for consideration on
Yes, sir.
Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, and J, vision and mission statements and goals for United ISD 2024, 2025 school year.
Good evening, once again. So we are here to present every year. We bring to you for consideration, and this is for adoption next week for your approval, consideration for your approval next week. About every 5 years, we bring to you new goals. So as a matter of fact, we're going from the 4 that we had currently, which were student achievement, perceptions, processes and programs, and demographics, and we're moving towards 5. The vision and mission remain the same. However, our goals are now academic excellence, recruitment, retention, and development of high-quality employees, family and community partnerships, safe, positive, and supportive culture, and fiscal responsibility and sustainable and equitable resources. And if you can just go down to the graphic, Sam. These are the goals that we are going to be using to develop our campus improvement plans and our district improvement plans, which I mentioned earlier when we were discussing the topic earlier. We have started our CNA meetings, our comprehensive needs assessment meetings, committee meetings at the district level as well as the campus levels. And so these are the goals that we will be using. And so for your consideration next week, I also wanted to share with you, if you can go up to the previous graphic. So these United Cares is our new driving force. This is something that was developed by leadership just a few weeks ago with one of our leadership consultants that we have been working with for probably a little bit over a year. We're very proud of this work, and we're rolling it out. And so just kind of wanted to share this with you all, since it will be our driving force, our guiding principles as we move forward. Customer service, or the C for customer-centered. United, we put the needs of the people we serve at the forefront of the decisions that we make. Accountability, United, we take ownership of our responsibilities and actions and their outcomes. Respect, United, we value the dignity, diversity, and perspectives of all people and treat everyone with compassion and fairness. Excellence, United, we strive for the highest standards of quality and performance in all we do, continually seeking improvement and innovation. And safety, United, we prioritize the well-being and security of individuals and environments and build a culture of awareness, prevention, and protection. And so we have already rolled this out to our campus administration, principals, assistant principals. We've been going over each of our guiding principles every week the last few weeks, and so we're excited about rolling this forward to the entire school district as we move forward. Thank you.
Sounds really good. All right. K, memorandum of understanding between United Independent School District and the U.S. Consulate General in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico.
So yes, members of the board, members of the audience, we currently have an agreement this school year between UISD and the U.S. Consulate, as we do have some U.S. citizens that are working for the consulate that are attending UISD schools, and so we're bringing to you for consideration a renewal of this agreement for the upcoming school year 24-25. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Morales.
Thank you.
And agenda item 5L and 5M, resolution declaring portable building unnecessary and approval of donation to Texas A&M International University, along with M, interlocal agreement between United Independent School District and Texas A&M International University regarding the donation of a portable building.
Mr. Montemont, members of the board, both items together. We were reached out by TAMU, specifically the soccer program, that they were interested in working with United to provide a unit. It is a part of our list of items that we're ready to dispose of and sell. As you recall, we did sell some units at Salinas, the old Salinas that we tore down. Those units are no longer on the site. We were able to successfully dispose of those particular items. They reached out with the possibility of us looking to work with them on this particular unit. They're looking for a building to be able to house visitors that come in for their program in addition to their own team. Several of our students have successfully gone onto the program to participate with TAMIU, so we're excited about this partnership with them. And it is a unit that's in disrepair, and so they would officially buy it for $1 from us, but they would be solely responsible for the transportation, movement, and renovation of that particular building. And they would hold us harmless of, you know, as is, where is, and just the way it is. So that's how we would give it to them.
Correct. Our firm did draft the resolution and the memorandum, and all our legal protections are in there to make sure we don't have any liability once it's out of the district's hands.
Thank you.
And the last item is a request from board members in reference to the use of Board of Trustees discretionary funds for various campuses and departments.
There's no additional requests other than what's in your packet.
All right. Make motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.